Hi, Bob.
Hey, Bob. Nice look. Bob's got kind of a beard action going. I like it. Welcome to the show.
It's like wintertime, Bob Murphy.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Hi, Bob. Great to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
And
Really.
thanks for your contributions to the store.
Oh, sure thing. Yes, least I could do.
Conference with Bob. Get some wisdom.
Well, he also had 3 books and they
books.
sold out in the first hour or so, I think. So you're a popular guy. So, Bob, tell me, what was your impression? Because I told you about the Silk Road and you had also heard about it in the news. But when did this case really start to resonate with you?
Well, sure. And I'm probably repeating some of what some people have said already. But for me, just so that Lynn knows her efforts are bearing fruit, it's because I'm ashamed to admit this, but I kind of fell for the government's ploy when they, dangled the stuff out there about those homicides. I was kind of like, ooh, I don't need to be messing with this. Before when it was purely voluntary, drug trafficking charges or that, then it was like pure libertarian issue. But then when they dangled it out there, it's not that I necessarily believed it, but it was kind of like, well, I don't need to get involved with this because that, and so their ploy worked. And then again, I'm just being honest, and that's what happened. And that was, of course, the reason they did that is to make people distance themselves. And I had just assumed, though, that when the convictions came down, I just assumed the trial at least was, fair in terms of the rigged rules that they use. And then when I heard Lynn talk, and I think it was at Pork Fest was the first time I heard her. And then, I saw her at a bunch of events, and I guess there was the one in Texas too.
Yeah.
And just, the more she talked about it, and the more I realized, like, my jaw would just keep dropping. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I kept thinking I knew how bad it was. And then the more, so one obvious thing was just the sentence. Manuel Noriega, I just Googled this to make sure, he got 40 years originally, and then it was reduced to 30.
And they had to send in the Marines for him.
Right. And for being a drug, international drug trafficker and, ruthless bad guy. So, there's clearly this was a political verdict. And then for people who don't know, I would encourage you to look up, some of Lynn's speeches and just see how they just changed the rules. Like ruling that, oh, no, the jury doesn't need to learn about how Bitcoin works, because I think they kind of understand that. People right now don't know how Bitcoin works. I don't know exactly how it works. And so the idea in a case where knowing cryptocurrency things are so crucial to just parsing the evidence, and that the judge saying that, the jury doesn't need to know that stuff, is just, like I said, my jaw literally dropped the more I heard Lynn talk about exactly how the judge ruled and what evidence was allowed. So it wasn't merely that, oh yeah, these drug laws I think shouldn't exist, but hey, the laws are what they are. And so this guy it wasn't like that at all. Like they didn't even follow their own rules. So that's why in a case like this, people say, why are you doing this? What's the point of shining light on? Well, they can just get away with throwing people in cages, not even following their own rules. What remedy is there except for people to kind of, be outraged by it and try to draw attention to it?
Not to mention trampling on our constitutional protections, which I guess are their rules.
Sure. So I guess that's what I would want people to know, is that for people who just had a vague knowledge of it and thought, oh yeah, I could see it, but the guy apparently killed some people, and to say, no, the government.
No bodies, if funny about that.
Yeah, they didn't even.
No charges.
Right. So that the things for which he was officially convicted, like I say, was nothing involving violence.
Not at all.
And he got a sentence way larger than they gave Noriega. So again, this is clearly.
Triple, no.
Yeah.
Triple times 2, plus 40.
Absolutely. And Bob, when we look at that, we think about, why did they do that? How can they get away with it? This is just a travesty by all reasonable judgments. What do we make of it, and how do we exist knowing we're in an environment that's like that?
Well, sure. I'm not saying anything profound here. I think the obvious reason they did that was they wanted to scare the crap out of everyone and just let them know, you better not enter this space and think you're going to get around our authority by, using cryptocurrency and using all these different ways of delivering packages and so on. So I think they wanted just to scare everybody and say, don't you dare think that, this Silk Road experiment is a novel way to try to get around our authority, and just to, terrify people and make, some more like legitimate businesses just say, oh, whoa, let's not get anywhere near this. So to me, that's clearly what it was. It was just to send a message.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're an economist. You look at what's going on with the world and how things operate. What do you see are the role of digital currency and the ramifications from an economic point of view on our world and in our practical lives?
Well, sure. So I think I actually have a guide called Understanding Bitcoin. So it's at understandingbitcoin.us. That's a free PDF download, just analyzing the.
I downloaded that the other day. Thank you very much for making that available.
Sure thing. So yeah, this is a fascinating topic. I mean, from an economics point of view, the reason this is so fascinating, just Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies more generally, is it solves the trust problem. So, economists for a long time, especially obviously ones that were very against the state, were arguing, oh, you don't need the government to provide money. And, you don't need, but still, you could have commodity monies, but in terms of things that were more electronic or whatever, everyone just kind of assumed you needed to have a trusted third party overseeing the transactions. And the libertarian argument was always, well, leave it to private companies, because if they engage in any shenanigans, they'll go out of business. So that, they wouldn't, they want to maintain their reputation, but still you had to trust in some third party companies and just hope they would act more responsibly than the state would with its monopoly. And so that's the beauty of cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin, for example, where, it really is peer to peer, and the network as a whole sort of verifies the transactions. You don't have to have some company that, you need to trust responsibly to maintain what's in everybody's account. But if the people at the top got corrupt or, just acted stupidly, then your money would be in danger. So that's really the beauty from an economics point of view of what they've solved there. And as I'm sure you guys know, Bitcoin, just the first application of it. More generally, the blockchain technology, a lot of people are saying, oh, money's just nothing. We're going to take this with contract enforcement and all sorts of other things where once it's up and running, it's out there, and the system as a whole kind of validates it or not. So you're not reliant on trusting any particular authority figures.
Yeah, it seems like it's a whole lot better than what we've had before, that now we've got something that is independent and verifiable. So if someone says, hey, I want to get into Bitcoin, I want to learn about digital currency, you've got a book on that. We'll read your book. What are some other ways we can practically start learning more about it, get into the world of Bitcoin and other digital currencies, and make that a reality in our own economic and financial life?
I mean, I would just tell people to just Google and just start reading different blogs perhaps on it. I think also the reason it's important for people to look into it is that right now in the current environment, and this kind of ties back into why do I think they levied such a heavy fine, some sentence in the Silk Road trial, is that they really are getting ready, I don't want to be melodramatic, but dropping the hammer, that there's all sorts of ways that the US and Western European governments are sort of integrating their tax system, that conventional banking and monetary systems, they really are trying to get, a sort of they call it harmonized regulatory framework to make it impossible to go anywhere. To me, that's why that you may know the Thomas Piketty, that French economist, and
Yes.
he had his book that was a big bestseller. Well, the book was not very well written, and not many people read it. I think the reason that was so popular is his call was to set up a wealth tax, and it was a modest one. But the point of it, and he even admitted this, was just so that the authorities in all the major nations would have the pretext to get everyone's financial information. So it wasn't so much to raise revenue, but they wanted to levy this tax on wealth so that everybody had to report their information so that there was no tax havens, as they call them. So in that environment, I think it's important that people read up on that. Even people who, aren't necessarily going to say, like I know older people, they say, I'm not going to go learn all this new technology. But if the banks all shut down, and this isn't like some crazy conspiracy theory, I mean, that's been happened in Cyprus. There's a lot of people worried about what's happening in Italy right now. So there are people, it happened in India where they are forced to turn in all of their 500 and 1,000 rupee notes. So, I mean, governments around the world are doing things where normal people all of a sudden wake up one day and their money is no good, or they go to the bank and the banks are closed. So in that environment, it would be good to have a system of currency that was completely outside this official framework.
Yeah, what kind of precautions would you recommend that we take in a practical way? Because they're going to be looking at it. Matter of fact, the IRS just came and said they want to know everyone that has had any interaction with, I believe it was Bitcoin Inc. or some service. What can we do from a pragmatic point of view to implement digital currency and make sure that we're not getting running afoul of the government?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because it's such a new area. And again, I think that's part of what they want to do is just scare people and make sort of normal businesses be reluctant. I mean, with various rulings, for example, talking about like, our capital gains going to be applicable to holding Bitcoins? You know what I mean? Because then you'd have to keep track of, well, what was the market price when I accepted them? And then when I got rid of them, and then do I have to report a capital gain on them and so on? Just doing various things. So fortunately, you know, with Bitcoin, actually, that's a lot easier to track than gold coins. You know, by their very nature, it's pretty easy, you know, just to keep track of when did I get this Bitcoin, even though it's not a tangible thing. So, I mean, it is legal right now, and I think people need to know that. And you could just find a CPA or somebody to make you comfortable if you're a business. There's plenty of businesses that accept it. There's also many new services that allow you. So it's not like if you're a business, for example, and you want to accept Bitcoin, there's services that very quickly will translate that into conventional currency in your account. So it's not that you're holding it and you're going to suffer from market fluctuations. So I guess what I would say is tell people is, you know, it makes sense to get into it now, because to make it a fait accompli, and then if more people are using it, then clearly it would be more difficult for them to expose. So you know what, this whole thing is, you know, is something you can't be handling. So as I say, right now, it's legal. The IRS has issued guidelines. There have been regulatory conferences, and I know economists who've gone and testified for various congressional subcommittees on it. So think about it. The average congressperson doesn't know how Bitcoin works. You know what I mean? So if they're supposed to regulate it, it's taken them a while just to say, what the heck is this? They don't even know what it is. So there is that lag, and so I think it's good for enthusiasts to set up the infrastructure and to show that, hey, this isn't just about, you know, selling contraband through the mail or something. This is a new technology. And I think that's part of the benefit too, that it is so much more efficient than the conventional systems that I think, yeah, they might try to stamp it down for a while. But it'd be sort of like, in one sense, you might have predicted when the internet was brand new, people might have said, oh yeah, the government's never going to allow this because it allows information to, but at this point, would any government try to just totally get rid of the internet? That'd be crazy. Instead, they, you know, try to censor fake news or whatever, but it's not like the internet's going away just because everybody relies on it so much now, even the people running the state apparatuses. So I think I'd like to predict that, you know, decades from now, cryptocurrency is going to be just, you know, it's like fire. It's going to be such a boon to humanity that, of course, people are going to use it. It's going to be governments will try different ways to regulate it.
Yeah, I think we see that trend. It's getting stronger all the time. We hear about Bitcoin. While we got you here, and in just a few moments that we have left, there are other currencies out there. There are other digital coins. Any that we should be aware of that you have seen? You go, that one looks kind of interesting. You might want to know a little bit about that. What out there would you see in addition to Bitcoin we ought to know about?
Well, I mean, of course, there's Tatiana coin.
Yes, that's my hand. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. No,
Yes,
I do. I'm not being coy with you. It's more that I'm interested more as an economist, like, you know, academic studying the concept of it. I do not claim to have expertise in terms of the investment side. So it's not that I'm being coy. It's just more I'm not in a position to push people into one or the other. But certainly, I'm glad you bring that up. I use Bitcoin just because of the cachet of the name. But, you know, for all I know, Bitcoin, you know, has disadvantages and other ones will rise to the surface. And that's the beauty of having competition, you know, products that, you know, it's, you know, beta versus VHS, you know, they were both similar technologies in which one won in the long run. So it's the same thing with cryptocurrencies. There's pros and cons of the various approaches.
Yeah, I think so. We want to see others. I think of Ethereum or Dash or Zcoin. Gary Lee was on earlier talking about that. There's a lot out there. It seems like it'd be a good idea. Just keep an eye on it, study, learn about it, read your book on Bitcoin, and increase our knowledge base. That seems right to me. What do you think, Bob?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, and I think also just people should try just to start using it, you know, just to get some. For example, when when the tensions between the U.S. and Russia heated up about a year ago, I bought some more Bitcoins. You know, I was like, you know what, this is the kind of thing where, and that's the thing when there was problems in Greece, you know, Bitcoin shot up. So I think it's in certain respects it acts like gold, you know, just being a hedge against uncertainty or whatever. So I think just people who understand why you might want to stock up on some gold, well, Bitcoin does serve that function. But it has certain advantages compared to gold, namely that it's intangible and you could easily transport Bitcoin somewhere else. Whereas if you're trying to lug a bunch of gold out of a border of a hostile state, you know, they might stop you and confiscate it. It's a lot easier just for you to remember a number or something as you're moving around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bob Murphy, you got a lot of fans here in the studio and a lot of those watching right now. You know, a big fan is Tatiana. Tatiana, before we let this young man get away from us, any final questions, comments, anything you want to say?
Yes, something very important. So how long are you going to grow this beard? What's going on? I've never seen this look. I like it. It's very rugged.
Yeah, well, the real answer is I was lazy. I was traveling and I hadn't shaved in a couple of days. Tom Woods had me on his show for something, a video, and he goes, "Oh, you couldn't shave," and so I said, "I'm growing a beard," and now I kind of have to.
Oh no, I think it's
you
a
know,
good look.
Otherwise, it'll
You
look like
should
I
rock
shaved.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, bearded one, you look good, and we like what you've got, and want to find out, how do people get in touch with you? They say, okay, I got to find out more about this guy and get your free ebook as well. What do they do for that?
Sure. So my blog is consultingbyrpm.com, and on Twitter, I'm Bob Murphy Econ.
Okay, and that's RPN as in Romeo Papa November. Is that correct?
No, Robert Patrick Murphy.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to get this right. We're going to make sure it's right. You know, it's got the M and M. You know, sometimes they sound similar. So, Robert Patrick Murphy, thank you so much for being here. It is an honor and
Thanks,
wonderful
Bob.
to have you here. So,
Okay, sure thing. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you.
all right.